Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF Everything in That Shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF Everything. Spoiled Rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Boom. I didn't even know what voice to do for that, but
I did the Bale voice.
Yeah.
You'll understand why.
yeah, we're doing the Batman, Matt Reeves' The Batman. It finally came out, and we're ready to talk about it.
Yeah, finally, because this was like a year or two delayed, right? Because of pandemic.
Yes, the pandemic definitely pushed.
Just
it
to be
back.
clear, yeah.
Okay, well, I don't even know how to start. All right.
So just before we do, though, I will say that I got to the theater a little bit late and got like the part of the movie I got into was the subway train where he's beating up the painted guys, and then that's it. So I think I missed a good like something in the beginning for sure.
Yeah. So I think there's more instances of it, but you missed something that I do appreciate about the movie.
Right.
Which is the visual storytelling.
Mm.
So the beginning of the movie uses Ave Maria, which Riddler sings later. And I believe it's Ave Maria, but
Yeah, it is.
No, I mean in the beginning. I know he sings it later, but I don't remember if I'm pretty sure it's at the beginning. And like I went on a roller coaster because I felt like, oh, they're gonna do so many things in this movie. And you see someone dressed as what looks like a Talon from the comics from the Court of Owls. And I'm like, holy shit, like they're going right into it. And then you realize, no, it's just a kid. He's playing around and it's the mayor. And he pretends, and like you see the sword, you see the guy get stabbed with the sword. It is not obvious right away that it is a kid playing with his dad, but then the guy gets up and you're like, oh, okay, they were playing around. But I was like, holy shit. But really what all of that is doing in terms of throwing you off the scent and everything is showing you how meticulous the Riddler is, because it's giving you can hear him breathing the whole time, like, but like what you're seeing is him being like, okay, this is where I would enter the house. This is like the track I would need to get to him. This is what I need to do. Like there's no dialogue, but it's just the way his binoculars are moving is you're seeing how he pieces this together, so that when he shows up in his apartment, you're not like, what? Like, how did he do it? You're seeing like he has taken his time with this. This isn't like he just barged his way in. Like he knows. You can take from that like he knows if there's like a changing of the guards and he has time to get in, where he's going to get in. It does a very good job of letting you actually piece together what's happening just visually without dialogue.
So I will have more thoughts on that later, because that does help me with one of my thoughts. And I was like, because I know from a lot of different people that opening scene is more important than anything. It's not like, oh, you didn't just meet Batman beating up thugs with or criminals or whatever with like the painted face guys with anything else. It's like you missed something decently important. So I'm glad you walked me through that. Is there more to it?
I don't remember exactly the I mean, so you just saw them on the subway.
I just saw them on the subway.
So then what you missed was a big part of Batman's lamenting of, I can't be everywhere at once, which is usually the Superman issue. Usually you meet a Batman that's like, this is my city, I know where to go. But this is a Batman, and I'm not saying that's a flaw, I'm just saying this is showing you that he sees where his limitations are, which is, I need to use the shadows to just like put the idea in people's heads that I could be anywhere. He just so happens to be with the people at the subway, but what they're showing you is a bunch of people doing a bunch of crimes, but always constantly looking off into the dark, being like, oh fuck, like is he behind me, is he somewhere? And so that's the another part you're missing, was that he uses, like, his absence doesn't mean that he's not effective. It's just
Right.
like the what he's set up in this world is that, like, just
Mm.
watch out in the dark. Like if you, like, if there's an empty space, I could be there.
Right.
I
Right.
I know I can't always be there, but the idea is, I like, they see the light, they
Mhm.
know like I could pop out at any second.
Right. Right. So I think, yeah, that's very interesting. I think that I would have really appreciated those two things. It would have set me up for a very different viewing experience. But I mean, having heard those two things, I could still put the rest of my viewing experience in the perspective that it is, because I mean, that was only like 5-10 minutes I missed versus the remainder 3 hours of the movie is
Yeah,
pretty well assessed, I think, right now by myself.
Yeah.
But that is good. Those are good openings, because I'm like, just seeing that would be so disturbing right off the bat, right? For
it
the Riddler.
really, for both the Riddler and the Batman, you're like, holy shit, like I'm a little bit afraid for the people in these scenes. Like it plays
Right.
more like a horror movie,
Right, right. Because
because
it's
you know they
just
could
like,
pop out at any moment.
Mhm. Which, horror or thriller, I think, crime thriller.
This movie is more of a thriller. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a horror, but I'm saying
Definitely
those
not.
elements
Yeah.
played more like horror.
Hmm. Yeah, like those breathing sounds and all that kind of stuff. That's
Mhm.
classic horror kind of stuff brought in. But yeah, so I think that would have been really, really cool to see, and really, really successful to see. But then where I entered in was basically when he's beating everything up and everyone up, and then he goes like, "I'm vengeance," and I'm like, "Cool, we're caught up, sweet." And then
I think
the rest of the
that's.
movie,
I think that's my issue is the movie feels at odds with itself, only because uh I don't. It's what I said when I saw the Batmobile. I think this whole, like, he's just a guy. He's just grounded, and he's doing. I'm
Mhm.
like, but would just a guy say I'm vengeance when
Yeah.
asked who are you? Like I think,
the guy in a mask would, I believe
but
that.
but I feel like you need to then fully embrace that he decided, I am going to dress and try to look like a bat. Like you can't. Like I think that's part of Batman for me, is that like he wouldn't just stop at what he's wearing. He wouldn't be like, yeah, but then I just got the car. It's just a car. I understand that he souped it up. Don't, like, I'm not saying it's just. I'm saying the visual, everything about him is talking about what he does to continue this mental intimidation.
Mm.
So why would he just stop at what he's wearing? Like I feel like that is what I like about Batman, is like it's everything about him. So the gadgets he's using, the like vehicles he's using, it's all part of it. It's not,
Mhm.
it doesn't just end at like, well, it would be silly to have a car that looked like a bat too. Like no, like he's all in on this.
Yeah.
And I think the other part that we'll actually go through it, but I'm trying to go through my complicated feelings about the movie, which is
Mm.
the other part that doesn't really work for me, and I'm sure it will the more I sit with it, but there's moments where he does like his escape, and like someone's talking to him and they turn around and he's gone, or he'll just show up, and I'm like, but this is a movie that's so into the details that I'm like there's that moment where I'll give them the he just escapes from the room, whatever. Like I'm not complaining about that. I like Batman stuff, but in a movie that's trying to show you like he really scraps for every inch, and like it's trying to
Mhm.
show you everything. I'm like, well, then how does he have that skill? Like basically this movie posits he only learned how to fight from Alfred.
Yeah.
There was no element of, oh, he went all over the world and trained. It's
Yeah.
Batman Begins. It's like Alfred taught him how to fight, and it's like, okay. But then there's that moment where, and we will go in order a bit somewhat later on, but like there's the moment where he's with Catwoman, and it's basically what leads to the Penguin car chase, and
Yep.
like he's down on the ground but then makes it to his car in like a matter of seconds. And I'm like, but how, like how though? What that's a lot of movement for us not to see. And again, if this was the Nolan movies, I wouldn't care. Like I didn't care that he was able to just show up in Gotham. Like I was like, yeah, we're embracing the Batman-ness of it. But this
Yes.
movie was so like, nah, man, like that's not, we don't do the comic book stuff. This is real. Like to my point earlier of like showing you like the Riddler doesn't just show up. The Riddler is very meticulous in looking at stuff. Same with Batman. Like he's pieced this together so that like it all works, even if he can't actually be there.
Mhm.
But then like they do like, but then they're kind of like, yeah, but whatever. He does Batman stuff sometimes. And I'm like, but why? Like it seems at odds. Like especially because it's 3 hours.
It's
that
very
you're-
at odds. It's a very
Yeah.
at odds movie
But like,
because
yes, continue.
I think one of the things I found was very interesting was that the tone of the movies is obviously setting up that detective noir kind of style thing where to me it has to be low tech in order to do that. Like you have a high tech detective noir stuff, it doesn't really work for me in that kind of broody atmosphere, right? You have that, and then you have the very high advanced tech where you're like, oh wait, this is modern day society that they're at. Gotham just looks cringy and grungy, and you're like, oh, he's got that like contact lens thing. He's got like all these different little gadgets that are like super high tech, but at the same time, he's like, and I appreciate this too, where the discussion with Alfred early in the movie, where he's like, hey, you know, you have to be Bruce Wayne sometimes. You gotta manage your money. You can't throw away your family's legacy and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, I don't care. This is all I have now. This is all I want. And it's just like, okay, so he's broke, or he's less rich than his other counterparts of Bruce Wayne. And in that, does he have enough money to get a Batmobile, or does he have to actually make his own?
I think what he's saying is he's not willing to play the game to fund this Batman thing. I don't think he's broke. I think what
Well, I
he's
don't
saying
think
is
he's
like,
broke. He's definitely
Yeah.
he's rich. He's like poor people rich, or house poor, or mansion poor. Or
I mean,
like,
I don't think that's
know.
what they were going for. I think what they were going
Right.
for is he's just dedicated to the Batman. Like,
Mm.
so
Gotcha.
he's not going to do what other Batmen have done, which is have Bruce Wayne be like, what Wayne tech can I use? He's like, I don't care
Mhm.
about that. I'm
Yeah.
doing this because I'm Batman. So yes, he needs to be Bruce Wayne to keep up the money from Wayne tech, and it
Mhm.
probably in future movies we'll see him embrace being able to use Wayne tech for his gadgets. But this is, I think what they were trying to do is the money, it doesn't factor in right now at this
Mm.
point.
I guess so.
But
Because I was trying to logic with the Batmobile. I'm like, maybe because it's such a high tech world that he has to make an old school hot rod type thing with a jet engine because he's too paranoid about GPS on any other car or microchips or something like that. So he has to
No,
make
it's-
everything himself.
The
I'm like,
thing is just like I
maybe.
don't need, I like it is, and I'm comparing him to Bale, but like Bruce Wayne, like
Mm.
I'm not going to use those resources. That's not what I don't care about that. Like
right.
I can build this car, but like no, I don't have the. I'm not going to use my funds to like ship from over here, ship from over there, and piece it together. It's like,
Mm.
what can I do in my garage, with like my pocket money? And I know that pocket money for him is different than pocket money for us. But
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Is I don't think he's like looking to like access those types of resources in this movie. I don't
enough.
know about but I think that comes at odds only because it's like why stop there? And I that's emblematic. It's not the only thing that's wrong, but like I guess we should kind of just walk through
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
plot. I guess it's like a not, I don't even know if it's going to be 2 sentences, but just the general idea of the movie is Batman, well, the Riddler is trying to expose the corruption in Gotham by starting to
Mhm.
kill off the mayor, the commissioner of police, and the DA. And then his next target is Bruce Wayne.
Mhm.
And basically all of this is connected to this renewal program that Thomas Wayne started, but all the people I just mentioned decided to cannibalize once Thomas Wayne was killed off. And you're trying to get to the bottom of who is this rat that kind of started this issue, which becomes clear as Carmine Falcone. I feel like that was a bit muddled in execution, but I get where they were going with that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's basically the idea. Catwoman gets introduced because her friend gets caught up in this because she's dating the mayor.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that is the story. I would say, like, is Riddler
Yep.
is trying to expose Gotham, and it's through these murders that he's doing, and it's exposing what is being done with
Mhm.
this idea that I don't think he was ever really on board with, but he's showing like, oh, this idea everyone thought was going to help is actually like funding all the corruption.
Mhm.
Okay, so yeah, that's the idea. I guess we can just go through the characters, um, and I guess their relationships. Stuff I thought worked was not necessarily the love story, but the relationship between Catwoman and Batman. That did feel more comic accurate in terms of, like, Catwoman isn't really necessarily ever strictly the bad guy. She is always this uneasy alliance with Batman. I thought they did that well, of him being like, oh, like, this is what we're gonna do, and then her being like, yeah, I'll do it until like it doesn't work with what I want to do, which is get
Yep.
vengeance for my friend. So I
Mhm.
really appreciated that she would torpedo his plan as soon as it was like, but this won't help me, so I'm not doing it.
Yep.
So I really liked that relationship they had, which is, the romance didn't quite work for me, but I was like, whatever. Like, in the comics, that's the thing. They love each other. They just
Yep.
can't really ever be together, but they love each other. So I thought that was really well done and comic accurate. I also loved that they gave Catwoman what usually would have been a Batman scene, when it's like, or a Bruce Wayne scene. Like, Batman is the person in the chair for that scene, where she has to
Mhm.
actually go into the 40 below club, or
Mhm.
44 below. I can't remember the number now, but going into going into the club, and then that's how she like meets the DA, played by Peter Sarsgaard. That was really cool, having him be the one that's like the man in the chair, being like, okay, do this, go here, and
Mhm.
then she has to figure it out. I thought that was like, oh, normally this would be Batman, like this, or at least if we were thinking of like Bale and the Nolan trilogy, that would have been Bruce and
Mhm.
Lucius,
Yeah.
but Bruce is the one going through it. So
And
I thought
I think that is the biggest thing, right? Is the idea that, as because it's clear that they only want to portray Batman, or this Bruce Wayne's only interested in being Batman, right?
yeah.
That's it. He's not interested, like you said earlier, of doing the dual identity thing to be like to gaslight society. Basically, he's just like, if people find out, I don't care. Um, so it limits him and his ability to do all that espionage stuff that Bruce Wayne is allowed to do and act like an idiot for, right? Like, I think back to, not that this is a good example, but Batman versus Superman, where, you know, Bruce Wayne gets to like stumble at a party and be like, I thought this was the bathroom, you know, like,
I mean, that is the stuff that works for me. If we're talking about Ben Affleck Batman,
yes,
is his Bruce Wayne in Batman versus Superman.
yeah,
His Bruce Wayne with Gal Gadot's Diana is all good stuff. Like,
yeah,
all that spy stuff. Not
I,
I don't
yeah,
care for his Batman, but that stuff worked for me.
I agree with you. Yeah, so having a Batman that's only one dimensional, where it's like, I only want to be Batman, where you're like, yeah, you can't do the espionage stuff unless you've committed to the ninja thing, which is the like, or the spy thing or whatever. And the fact that they took that out, where it's like, oh, Alfred did this, and Alfred is special ops and whatever. And I'm like, that's a good, I don't mind that, because it's like, this is realistic. The way, especially the way he told it on the deathbed, which we'll get to, but like, it's realistic the way they provide it. Like, I'm not, sorry, not deathbed. The hospital bed,
yeah.
the hospital bed that he was
we'll
on.
get to Alfred.
Yeah, we will get there, but like, the way that relationship was explained actually made so much sense to me, more so than other kind
Didn't
of
really
things.
make sense to me, but as I said, we'll get to Alfred.
Well, the decisions Alfred made sense to me. What they decided to do with the character didn't. But
Yeah,
I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah,
When we get
we'll
there, for sure.
get there. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to focus on what I like. So I liked
Yeah.
Catwoman.
Catwoman, I did like up until
I also
they
like that she
decided
got to do
use her as
the
a
like
prop.
silent takedown stuff, like with her whip. What that leads to that weird Batman moment where he's on the ground but not. But like, before that, when she's taking out the guys, I was like, oh, like, again, this is another moment that you would give to Batman. But I like that Catwoman got it. I thought it basically, I like her use in the movie. I genuinely feel like she's got her own thing going on, and it felt more like the comics, where it's just like, yeah, they're intersecting, but it's not like she's there to serve Batman. She's got her own mission.
Yes.
And as she keeps telling people, I'm perfectly fine, like capable of taking care of myself.
Mhm.
So I really liked that moment. And the one thing I knew for sure was like, I don't remember if they ever commit to it, but I do know that I think it's Long Halloween.
Mhm.
She assumes Falcone is her father in that, and she gives him that scratch, like just like in the movie, in the comics, she gives him the scratch on his face and everything. So I was like, oh yeah, okay, I know they're trying to fake us out, but like I knew that she was his daughter. I guess the movie just lands on she is his daughter, but I was like, I don't know if the middle section of it didn't really work for me, but I still liked her performance. Everything about her performance was good in terms of how she felt about Falcone, and like especially when you're like, oh my goodness, he's the one that choked out my best friend, like, or I don't even know if it's best friend, but she seemed very close with Annika.
That was her
when
partner, wasn't?
Well, that's the thing.
They
I'm
were
like, is it
dating,
just
like-
friends or are they dating?
I
couldn't.
don't think
The movie doesn't
so.
commit to it
I thought
because she calls everyone honey and babe. Like she calls Batman that like almost immediately. So like I can't really go off of the pet name
you're
she
right
uses
about
on the phone.
you're right about that too, because I was
And
going to
she
go off
calls
the pet
everybody.
names.
Yeah, she
Yeah, you're
calls
right.
everybody pet names. So I
You're
couldn't.
right.
I can't go off of that. But like to me, it looked like they were in a relationship, but the movie doesn't commit to it, and it's somewhat immaterial. All you need to know is that she cares about this person.
Yeah, because were we ever explicitly told that Annika was in a relationship with the mayor, or like was it a professional
Yeah,
relationship?
no, it's not professional. That wasn't
Okay.
fair. Yeah.
Okay, it wasn't a fair. Okay,
Yeah,
so it's just a poly situation that's happening right now, an
Batman-
unethical poly situation. Because like if it is a
I think
relationship,
it's
I just
just-
don't think it is a relationship. It makes it less and less of a relationship the more you say it.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know
Mhm.
if the movie commits one way or the other. I think that it was just
It's very
she really
open-ended.
cares about this person. That's her
Yeah.
friend.
Mhm. Well, for the very, very good reason that we find out, it's like, hey, because my mom worked in this kind of place too, and I see myself like, and I see hundreds of girls like come in, come out, and all this kind of stuff. Like, there's a lot of alluding to like, no, I just strongly empathize or sympathize with this, with Annika, and I want to make sure that she gets out alive. Is the impression I got more
Yes.
so than I think they're in a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
Mm.
I don't think. Again, as I
Yeah.
said, I don't know that it matters
It doesn't.
what it is. It's you need to know that she cares about this person. That's
Yes.
the important part.
That's the only thing that matters.
And I think what didn't work for me was their first meeting, because I'm like, like I didn't really like the fake out at the funeral either, because I know that they purposely put out set photos of Zoe Kravitz being there.
Yeah.
Which she isn't in the actual movie.
Mhm.
But I was just like, I don't understand that fake out, because it implies that Falcone knows, because he's with a woman who has the same nails, the same like getup
Yep.
as Selena, and I'm like, that implies that he knows that someone's looking for something. Like it's just a weird coincidence. Like I don't really understand why he's like, because she's looks like his daughter, who I assume doesn't know is his daughter for sure. He probably has some suspicions.
I think the movie's implying that if he knows, he doesn't care, because he's just like,
Sure, I mean, he does say though, this does hurt. It's my own flesh and blood.
well,
But
I mean,
think-
like as you're killing someone, you're just like, I don't
I
know
don't
how
think
much
he
of
was-
that he believes.
I don't think he was saying it hurts that he's killing her. I think he says it hurts that she's coming at him.
Yes,
I don't think that he was saying it hurts me to kill you. He's gonna
but
do it.
either way, to say that it's just like, hey, I'm
Well, I don't
just
think it's an
adding
either
a
way situation. I think it is important that distinction, that like
Mm,
if he is acknowledging like, oh, my own flesh and blood came at me, that is all about the themes of this movie of sins of the father coming.
Yes.
So like,
But in that-
it does make a difference if he actually is saying like, oh my goodness, my kid's coming after me.
yeah, but if you're being attacked and you're just like, hey, maybe we can use the emotions to throw this person
At that
off
point,
too.
no, at
I
that
don't
point
know.
he's already winning. Like he doesn't like.
It's true.
He's not like fearing for his life. At no point does he fear for his life.
Yeah, because I mean, like she had him point blank and like still missed. So I'm like, All right,
already about.
whatever.
He's just about to like choke her out at that point.
Yep.
He's not worried for himself.
Yeah.
He's
He's
talking
totally
shit,
not.
like, so he doesn't need to worry that, oh, she's gonna like get one up on me on this. I
Mm.
think it was more that. But what I'm saying is, regardless,
Mm.
that kind of muddles it, because I'm like, what?
It does.
For me as a comic reader, I'm like, well, I know where they're going with this, and then all the things they do for Mr. X, like, I feel like the way he caresses her is supposed to imply like, oh, maybe they had a relationship, and Batman assumes it's a relationship.
Yep.
That he has with her. I'm like, it isn't. Or I mean, at one point I was like, are they going to do that? Like, she doesn't know for sure that he's her dad or whatever. I'm like, no, they wouldn't do that. That's not this kind of movie. So it's just that it's her dad. But I'm just like, I feel like they could have mined a bit more if they didn't ever meet up, and that it is constantly her trying to collect information to prove that he is the person that got her mom pregnant.
Mhm.
But the way she's kind of like, well, yeah, like she brought me around all the time, and I always wondered why he looked at me a certain way, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess we're just waiting for the the bomb to drop then,
Mhm.
like for all this time. But yeah, I thought that was one of the weaker parts of a really strong character arc in terms of Catwoman. So I like that.
Mhm.
I liked Jim Gordon. I thought it was because he's not commissioner yet. I kind of liked how he seemed lighter. Like, it was just a lighter touch. I also think that Catwoman had like a lighter touch than normal. It wasn't all doom and gloom. She was kind of like, yeah, like, I'm doing something serious, but I'm gonna have fun while I do it. But whereas Jim
Yeah.
Gordon, like, the way he kept going, like, man, like, hey man, I don't know if we should do that, or hey man, we really gotta go, man. I liked. It doesn't matter. I think the script is well written in places. A lot of
In places.
I think
Yeah.
that maybe the script was amazing initially, and then just
Mhm.
in filming stuff kind of they got in the way of themselves, because definitely in this
Mhm.
movie is he got to do whatever or it feels like no one told him no on this movie. No one told Matt Reeves no on this
Mm.
movie. The way it's pieced together, it didn't feel like someone kind of came over and was like, maybe we rearrange some stuff, maybe we cut some stuff, but
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
to the cut some stuff comment.
but like Jim Gordon worked for me. I thought like this makes sense, like,
Yeah.
especially the way Batman just is like, no, like, Riddler's not after you, you're not corrupt. I thought that was a very nice moment of
Yep.
being like, because I was like, wait, like, what if they're trying to be like, oh, this is like the same way they kind of showed that Thomas Wayne made a mistake. I'm like, what if they're
Mhm.
gonna like expose a mistake Gordon made? But it was just like, no,
Yeah.
he's just not a bad guy.
Yeah, I like that moment with Batman and him like, no, you're not corrupt. And then also too, it's just like, you're not the commissioner yet. You're not someone of power yet. So there's no real reason that the Riddler would bother. And if he wasn't related to the renewal program in its running or its conception or however it was bastardized, then I don't think Riddler would have actually just gone for it and all that kind of stuff, right? The final like scene where he has the calling of everyone, that's kind of goes off track a little bit, but not really. But yeah, I don't know, that Jim Gordon made sense to me.
Yeah,
He
I
made
like
sense
Jim
to
Gordon
the
in this
level
movie.
that he's at in the detective. And I really like the fact that like he was, well, yeah, when he was like, man, it got to me. I'm like, for scenes that are really, really making you pay attention to every single word that you're using, that's a word that gets thrown in there a lot. And I'm
Mhm.
like,
But
it's interesting.
what I liked about it is that it kind of showed that like it hasn't quite broken him yet. Like, Gotham hasn't quite broken him yet. There is
Yes.
still
He's still
that's what I
surprised
think.
by it. Or he can
Well,
still be shocked
more
by
what I mean
it or
is like
something like
there's a level of comfort he still has, right? Like he's not
Mm.
uneasy yet. He's still like, to be throwing around man the way he does. It's so casual. It's more familiar, right? Like he's not. Yeah, I thought it was more that, not that he was shocked by stuff. I mean, obviously he'd be shocked by stuff, but I think if you're working with Batman and to like be calling him man, and I think they didn't go into it too much, but you can see the starting of the like collected father thing that Batman does in basically every iteration,
Yep.
especially when he's in the police station after he passes out and then he's on the table, and you think that Gordon is actually like working with the policeman. I can't remember what he says, but basically Batman's response is, "Oh, you too now?" Like it, you could see him being like, "Man, I looked up to you. Fuck you." And then you realize Gordon. Then you realize Gordon's like, I'm trying to get you out of here, man. Like you can just punch me and you can go out that back door. Like I just needed to clear the room. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, yeah, like I like that moment of Batman actually being like, oh my god, like I trusted the wrong person. I trusted you. I looked up to you, and you're doing this. But it all comes together. That's what I'm saying. Like I feel like if you were just to go scene by scene, it's really well written. It is one thing I think people might argue with, but I think the movie legitimately is well written if you just were to take it scene by scene in a vacuum. There's very few scenes where you could be like, because if it's not the dialogue that's really helping you, and yes, I know that performances are really pushing this, like people are doing a good job in this in terms of performances, but it's also what I talked about, the visual storytelling. Because when we talk, like the one that worked the best for me, and we can use this to transition into Alfred, is when you don't know it, but he's looking at the whole crime scene or whatever, and he lingers on the boy, and we know as an audience, like, of course he cares about this kid. Like I feel like that's us being like, he's locked in on this case now. Like if it means helping this kid get some closure for the death of his father, like he's gonna lock in on this. Like he's not, and I get it, like why wouldn't he lock in? But I feel like that's the movie without words showing you like, no, he really cares about this because it's because of this kid. Like he sees himself in the kid. And then when you realize, oh, he can film all of that, and then Alfred is looking at the footage, and you're watching Alfred observe how long he waits on the kid and observes the kid, because in the movie it's kind of played for laughs with Gordon being like, man, we really gotta go. But that's all put together, and it's well written for Alfred then to be like, okay, I'm in on this too. Like I'm not going to try and talk him out of this because I see what he cares about in this case. I get it. And I think it all comes full circle because that is the kid that he saves at the end from the thing and watches fly off or whatever. Like it again, nothing is like beating you over the head with it, but if you're tracking, that kid is his entry point into this, and that's what like pushes him, is that like he feels like he can make a difference for this kid, which is the stuff I like about Batman, is making sure that people don't feel lost to the violent death of a loved one.
Because this Batman is still, it's year 2. He's writing his journals, he's doing those reflection pieces, he's self-reflecting after every thing, right?
Seems like every month he like does a reflection.
Or just whenever it's convenient, or whatever.
Probably more, because he does do one like November 6th or something.
He like pushes, he pushes, he's like, gotta push myself, gotta push further, and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, I like that aspect of this Batman where we're kind of getting that understanding. And then you're right, like Alfred is noticeably changes once he lingers on the kid. Once we see that as an audience, we're like, yep, all right, there's empathy behind this. I think that's Alfred's way of being like, he's still okay. He's not completely lost into just beating people up. He's like, he's doing this for a purpose. He's like, he cares about people still. And he's like, just, working out his trauma or whatever it might be, or just doing what I literally showed him to do after his father died, was protect himself. And it turned into this. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this isn't my thought, but I agree with it. That I've heard people be like, it is about how Batman realizes he needs to like be of the people and not just on the outside looking in. Which I think then gets you to what I was talking about him being like, this is my city, I know where to go. Like I think integrating himself, actually integrating himself, is what will help that in future movies. So
Yeah.
this movie is, I mean, do we need 3 hours for him to get there? I don't know.
I
But
don't think so, but
um I mean, and I only say that because I don't care. Like the movie could have been 4 hours. It didn't feel like 3 hours to me. I didn't feel like I
Ooh.
was like dragging, but like I think in terms of where we meet him and where he ends up, I'm like, that could have been done in an act. Like,
yes.
but
And
but
Mhm.
that's the movie we got. So I'm not. I don't know, that's all I'll
Mhm.
say. I don't really want to dwell on it because it's kind of like we're not here to rewrite the movie. Like
Right.
it's just to interact with the movie that we did get. But yeah, so that leads me to Alfred, which is
Mhm. But wait, hold on one second before we, because I like that thought that you put up there, and I want to address it because it's true. Because Nolan did that arc in one act in Batman Begins, where like Bale, Batman, he just basically like, I'm rejecting money. I'm doing this. I'm leaving, all this kind of stuff. I have to steal to be poor or whatever like that. He just wants to fight crime. He was doing it his way without the gadget and all that kind of stuff. He was doing basically what Pattinson did in this entire movie until he was like, okay, I literally have to come back. Bruce Wayne has to come back to the world. I have to use my resources. I have to do this. I have to do the symbol. He has a fully fleshed out thought, right? The interesting thing there is, and I guess the difficult part about this movie is because this occurs within the span of like 2 weeks, right? Versus Batman Begins spans over multiple months, maybe a year or something like that. So we're seeing all these rapid developments in Batman Begins, but you're right. It was successfully done within one act. And that was my entire thought process in this entire movie. Was one of the biggest things, like, okay, so it's taking him the whole movie to learn that he has to be a part of the people. But the whole movie's working so hard to make it so that he's not gonna be one of the people and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, I get that the kid's the entryway, and I'm like, oh, it's the kid again. He saves the kid 3 times. And I was just like, and I want to go back and be like, is there a fascination with the number 3 in this movie? Because the other thing I can remember is the song drop for Nirvana, Something in the Way, at
Mhm.
least 3 times. And I'm like,
It's
is there
twice.
was there a theme
not
of 3?
The
Really?
other
I
three
heard
is
3.
no, it's twice, and then it's him knocking on the door with the twins is 3 times. So he goes once as
Oh, I see.
Batman, do you know who I am? Beats them up. Second as Bruce Wayne, do you know who I am? Doesn't need to beat them up because he's Bruce Wayne. Then the
Right.
third time he uses both and doesn't even do the do you know who I am. He just sneaks
So there
in.
is a fascination with 3s in this in this movie for sure. At
Uh,
least that's what I'm
I
seeing.
don't know
but,
that he
like,
saves the kid 3 times, but
he does,
certainly-
doesn't he? He
I
does.
don't
Like,
think so.
okay, he saves it the first time, and then he pulls the kid out of the way in the funeral from the car.
So
And
yeah,
then
he pushes
the-
the kid all the way at the funeral, and then
Yeah.
he lifts him up at the end. But I thought that was
Right,
only
but he
2.
saves the kid from the. Well, I mean, he doesn't say, he identifies with the kid. There's
Yeah.
3 times that he sees the kid, or like he provides comfort to the kid, or the kid sees comfort in Batman, right? Like, that's the thing.
Well, I would show
feel.
you that I not show you. I don't think he sees comfort in Batman until
Mm.
the end. I don't like that's
Yes.
the point of the movie is that no one sees comfort in Batman. He saves that person at the subway stop, and like
Yeah.
the person's still like, "Fuck, don't hurt me." Like
Mm.
that is the movie. So it's still not him as Bruce Wayne realizing he needs to integrate. It's him being like, this symbol that I created, Batman, can't be about vengeance. It has to be about hope. So Batman needs to be integrated.
So basically, he's gone too far into the vengeance category. He needs to bring himself back to the center of being like, no, it has to be for this code, or like at least people will.
Well, yeah,
that makes sense.
He never says I'm Batman, right? They said, "Who are you?" And he goes, "I'm
Just, I am
vengeance." People
vengeance,
call him vengeance throughout the movie.
Yeah.
So he needs to get away from that. So
Yeah.
that is the movie. But yeah,
He needs to rebrand.
yes, like Hawkeye. So Alfred. What doesn't work for me about Alfred is like, again, written on paper, I understand it. He's not interested in being Bruce Wayne. Alfred is interested in Bruce Wayne. So you don't really get much Alfred in this
Mhm.
movie. If you've seen the trailers, you've seen Alfred other than him getting blown up, which obviously you wouldn't put in the trailers. But
Yeah.
like he doesn't he helps with the cipher, which I liked. Like I was like, oh yeah, like I would like more of this. like
Mhm.
because it didn't feel like. One thing I do like about the movie as a whole is all the characters they introduce feels like it is unique to this vision. Like that, I
Mhm.
felt like they were different enough that like sure everyone will compare, but like you don't need to compare. Like I felt like they were different enough that they stood on their own as like this is Matt Reeves' version of these things, and
Yes.
that's a good thing. Like I think that is good that I'm not sitting there being like, oh, well, it should be like this for certain characters. I would like more of Alfred. I'd like him to actually be in the movie more, but
Mhm.
I wasn't like, well, Alfred should be like this. Like I was like, well, this is Alfred for this universe. Like I
Yeah.
hope he gets to be in an actual movie instead of just kind of
Getting
on the
fringed, basically.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I again, Catwoman, great. Like Riddler, we'll talk about like Penguin, great. I think like I
Yep.
think all of them are unique to this universe, and I think that's always important to have iterations that actually stand out and don't feel like. And I'm not saying this to shit on Jared Leto because will always maintain I will always maintain that his shit got cut, so I don't know what he actually did.
Yep.
We didn't see what he actually got to do. We got to see a trailer house be like, whatever, put this together and let's get the movie done. But what they put together felt like a riff on Heath
Mm.
Ledger, so it didn't
Yep.
feel like it was this unique thing. So that's what I mean is that like it's good to have different iterations that like everyone feels like, if people feel like this is the best Batman, good. Like
Mhm.
I hope that like we can have different versions of this so that it keeps going, and never feel like we've seen Falcone on TV and Gotham in
Mhm.
Batman Begins. He feels completely different here as John
Yep.
Turturro. Like it didn't feel like, and like they got to use a lot more of the comic stuff, especially the whole
Mhm.
hey, your dad took the bullet out of me stuff. Like all of that's from the comics, all of that's great, and it
Mhm.
feels unique to this. Um, but yeah, I think with Alfred, it was just kind of like, okay, they're at odds because like they always usually are. Like,
Mhm.
but what I liked about this was like he he's like, yeah, take a shower, but also I did work on this thing for you. Don't worry. Like he's trying to make up for what he thinks he lacks as a paternal figure.
Mhm.
Like when he says, "You're not my dad, Alfred," I was like, "What an asshole!" But like, he's like, "Yeah, I'm well aware of that," and it is him being like, "Yeah, that is my limitation, is not being able to connect with you that way.
Mhm.
I can help you with the combat stuff, but like, he obviously wants to be more than that to him." And so
Yep.
the payoff for that is the hospital scene you were talking about, where he was like, "I thought I would." Look, I've known fear of like losing people, and then I felt it again when you were blown
Mhm.
up. Like that's a really nice moment, but I think that's the last time you see Alfred, so you don't really get to
Yeah.
see any more of it. But like I like that. Like I thought that was really nice. Like
Yeah.
again, for another movie. Like
Mhm.
okay, well then that'll be good if they do another movie. But for this movie, it was kind of like, I mean, that's a big part of it is how Alfred reconciles Batman Bruce Wayne.
Mhm.
But since the movie is so convinced that like we don't need to get into that, then you don't have a lot of Alfred.
Yeah.
And it feels awkward to me.
It feels very awkward to me because I did like what you said about the different versions of characters because I fully believe that we're now at a point where we have to accept that. Like I look at, all right, who's going to play Wolverine next? Are they going to
Mhm.
do something similar to Hugh Jackman? I certainly hope not. I want them to do their own thing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It
That's why
needs to
I
be.
always get bummed out when it's like, oh, this person's coming back. I'm like it was my fear for Homecoming. I'm like, or not Homecoming, No Way Home. I was like, I'm glad they all left
Yeah.
because I don't
Or
want it to
yeah.
be like no one could ever beat Willem Dafoe at being Green Goblin. It's like, well,
Yeah.
then how enduring is the character?
Yeah. Or like Evan Peters showing up in WandaVision. It's just like, oh, okay, cool. It's just a misdirect. It's not actually Quicksilver from the original X-Men films and all that kind of stuff. Because you already know what you're gonna get at
Yeah, like
that point, right?
MCU worked because they put their stamp on characters that not
Yeah.
everyone knew, but some people knew. And
Yeah.
so if you're just going to be like, whatever, you guys know this one, we'll bring it in, it doesn't feel as good.
Mhm.
But I like that this movie stood on its own in terms of these are
Yeah.
our versions of this.
And especially for the Batman franchise, like there's so many different versions of Batman now where we have to be able to stand on that. Where like, okay, this is just the Andy Serkis Alfred, and it's just that the movie wrote itself into a corner where you can't have too much Alfred, because the issue is if he genuinely cares. He's very consistent. He's very empathetic and sympathetic and compassionate towards Batman throughout the whole thing. So the issue ultimately is if to me, anyways, watching as an audience member, if I was to watch a lot of scenes with Batman, Bruce Wayne, and Alfred together, and Alfred's constantly doing things like, "Hey, I'm making you tea. I'm doing this puzzle for you. I'm set up this accountant for you. I did all this kind of stuff for you," and then Bruce is constantly like, "I don't care about any of that." It just makes me hate Bruce a lot more by the way he's treating Alfred, because I'm like, dude, you stop being a douchebag about it. Like, say thank you at least. You know what I mean? You just seem ungrateful to the people that are trying to help you. And I guess that's the thing. It's just like he has to be like, oh, okay. After you process trauma, you have to be able to reach out to people again. It's like, yes, we knew that. That's like the same for every Batman movie, in the sense where he's got to find those few people that he identifies and connects with, which is the Bat family, Selina Kyle, the Justice League. Well, he just doesn't identify. He doesn't do that with the Justice League. He's got contingency plans, but every Batman kind of thing after the trauma is processed and he's a full functioning Batman is like, yes, you have to be able to connect with people again, as opposed to just being in the Batcave. Like every single version of it. And I'm just like, the movie writes itself in a way where you can't have too much of that. Otherwise you just start hating Bruce.
Well, I don't know if he ever comes off as a very likable person.
Well, he's a very, just for lack of a better term, selfish person, in the sense where he only cares about his vengeance, right?
Well, what I'm saying is the movie never starts with like, oh, this guy's a good guy. Oh no, like
he's not interested.
It's already started at the part where he's not a likable person. So I don't,
or he's a
recluse.
Like, I think the media
actually
has, right?
should lean into the pressure, because what I would say is, I know we haven't gotten to so many characters, but what I would say is what didn't fully land for me on the ending, and maybe it will, like if I rewatch it or just sit with it more, is that like I understand that the change is I'm gonna be less selfish, but I didn't see any real pressure points for him to like make that change, which Alfred can do very easily if you keep him in the movie.
But I like that
because Jim Gordon felt more like a yes man to him, so it didn't feel like Jim was pushing him. Catwoman didn't really, like, she had an effect on him, but I didn't really see what changed other than he's like, I like her, so like maybe I should soften. I think having more Alfred would actually help push him, like in concert with a whole bunch of other stuff, because basically for me at the end I was like, yes, I understand theoretically why he has changed. I get it. Like you've got the voiceover to make it clear, like I can't do this if everyone is afraid of me, so I need to be, which they already set up at the beginning, but the steps in between didn't really prove that to me.
So it does to me, in the sense where getting to the ending of the movie, like he essentially fails at his thing, right? So through
Who does?
Batman.
What did he fail at?
Saving Gotham.
How?
The Riddler's plan just went off. Like, just everything about Riddler's plan just worked. He just, like, the only thing he got wrong, we'll get there to that part, because I know that's a big discussion in itself, but like Riddler's plan worked. He got all the bombs off. Batman saved no one. It didn't seem like a win.
No. The big thing about Riddler's plan was to kill Bruce Wayne. That was the thing. And I want to talk about that. That leans into something that I genuinely liked about the movie, which seemed muddled, because I was like, do they know what they're doing here, or is this just like I liked it. It made me want to, like, no one was beside me, but it made me want to, like, oh, I know what this is. But so,
but how does Batman win? How does he?
I mean, I don't know how you, like, he wins because he stopped everyone getting like drowned out and shot up at that thing.
Yeah, but
took
he
out
didn't stop the bombs from going off, though. Like the thing is,
Okay,
Riddler
like, so this
destabilized
is
Gotham. He
yeah,
destabilized
and then
Gotham. Infrastructure was
through
brought down. Corruption was brought down. All this kind of stuff in Riddler's eyes. Riddler won. He did
no,
not
not
lose.
in Riddler's eyes. Riddler's
The only
ends
thing,
crying and until Joker consoles him.
yes, but
But
that's only
his whole point
because
was he needed to take out. Let me get out the thought, because I think
Right.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, no, Riddler doesn't see that as him winning. The whole point was to gather everyone in a space and pick them off with his snipers, which didn't happen. So that is how Batman stopped it. And the win for Batman is seeing how he moves forward and actually, and him saying in the voiceover, I see the effect I've had now and I see how to move forward, which is I will become a sign of hope, which I did at this thing. I gave people hope in that moment at the arena. So that's the win. Saying he didn't win because the bombs went off is like being like Batman didn't win in Dark Knight Rises because the city was quarantined at a certain point. Like, yeah, he had a down moment, but then he came back, which is classic storytelling. I think that we can just, well, I don't want to get right to the Riddler because that's a whole bunch of stuff. I think Penguin, and we can do Penguin and
okay.
Conrad
We'll fridge this discussion for when we talk about the Riddler. Let's talk about Penguin because I do want to hear your thoughts about it.
I like Penguin. I thought that
Awesome.
I think Colin Farrell did an amazing job. I was like, man, this guy, like, you really forget that's Colin Farrell.
Couldn't recognize him at all. Like, even voice. I'm like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah, his voice, his accent, everything about it. I was like, wow, like, this is great. And I like that it's how I feel. Maybe I like it because it's how I feel like these early Batman stories should be told. It's like you're seeing how the like original gangster, like mafia types have to make way for these more charismatic people like Oz, Cobblepot the Penguin. Like he's going to take over or try to take over in this power vacuum now that Falcone is dead. And you see that he waddles. I think they even call him a gimp at one point. You see that, like, yeah, if he's been the right hand man for that long, he might be like, yeah, let me get this guy out of here. Like I've observed what needs to be done and I can do it. And it also sets him up as a more comic accurate Penguin of he wouldn't see himself as someone that would need to go to Arkham. He would see himself, no, I'm a proper criminal. Like, but he is like Riddler and I guess Joker, but like I think the all of that worked for me, and I liked the energy he brought to the scenes he was in.
Yes, I loved Penguin. He was, to me, the best part about this movie because it was just so consistent, was so good, and like
they also said he wasn't in it that much, which led me to believe that it was going to be like Earth One, the comic that I read in preparation for this movie, where I think it's Alfred kills Penguin like early on.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay. So like when they start announcing the cast, I'm like, oh, I see how this is Earth One. We've got Riddler, we've got Catwoman, we got Penguin. They even cast twins, and that's a big part of their muscle men in the comic. But I was like, wow, like it seems like they're casting for a Earth One movie. And I'm not saying I wish they did Earth One. I'm glad that this was just its own thing. You can see where the influences come in, but it's again what I say I like about MCU. Like you can see influences, but it's not trying to retell stories from the comics. You can just your knowledge of comics can help you enjoy it, but they are telling different stories. And I like that this movie is just a unique story. But I was really happy that he's just in the movie, like from beginning to he's one of the last people you see on screen in the movie, and we know that he has a TV show coming and stuff. Like
super excited for that now. That work anything like this. I mean, I think it's going to do the criminal.
Well, like we'll see. I think it has the potential to be too much of a good thing, but we'll see.
What I meant by that is this of Cobblepot. Like
that's like what I mean. Like he works because he gets like 2 minutes per thing. Like he gets to do these spurts. Like he works like the Joker in Dark Knight. Like you feel like he takes up all this space, but I'm Sure, people have done the math of how much screen time he actually takes, but if you were to try and extrapolate, or what we said about Punisher, right? Like, you he worked in Daredevil season 2 for me, but then once you try to make a whole show about it, you're like, well,
I
don't
agree.
know if we needed this. So I hope it's good. But I am still a bit worried that like they might be getting a little overzealous with we have a whole Penguin show, because I mean, we saw Gotham and it was kind of like that should have been the Penguin show, and they kind of just went, I don't know, like let's just make it Batman again. So maybe this is them being like, we understood what we did wrong last time, let's just commit to the Penguin. But yeah, I thought he was great. Falcone, as I said, he worked for me, other than kind of the sequencing of how they reveal that he's Catwoman's dad. Didn't quite work for me, but as a character, just when he's doing his thing, I really liked it. I loved that he led Batman by the nose, which I guess is another thing that I thought was weird about people really leaning on. He's finally a detective. I'm like, not a very good one.
Yes,
I felt like
what the hell?
Throughout the movie, I was kind of like, you're wrong about this whole or like, you're wrong about this whole rat with wings thing. Like, I know that the movie ultimately
egregious with me.
I know that the movie ultimately landed on he did mean Falcone, but I'm like, when has that, like, rat with wings is always a bat. Like, I've never not
or
thought
pigeon.
it was a bat
Or a pigeon.
Or a pigeon, which I think he says initially, but I was kind of,
he says stool pigeon, something that, which
I'm
leads him to the Joker. But I'm like, no, I'm sorry, not to the Penguin. I'm like, a stool pigeon ain't no penguin though. What?
Yeah,
I don't.
I just kind of was like,
come on.
I mean,
that was foul wordplay.
I won't get into the detectives because I never was on board for it, so I'm just happy people have it. If people like that, but I think like this is the best case scenario of doing Detective Batman, and I didn't think he came off looking like a great detective. And
I 100% agree with you.
They even use World's Greatest Detective to make fun of him. Like Penguin does.
That's like, my favorite scene.
Yeah, it's like, a great scene.
Because I'm like, yes, like, it's so stupid that you like like La, and I'm like L. I'm like, this is so dumb. This is so incredibly dumb. Like, why would
the
he
only
be the
time
world's
it was
greatest
good
detective?
for me? The only time it was good for me was when in the first scene after the mayor is dead, and he's at the crime scene, and he's pointing out stuff to the cop again without saying anything. Like, he just kind of focuses. I mean, maybe he wasn't doing that because maybe he was just taking the pictures with his contact lenses, but it seemed like the visual storytelling was showing us that like he'll focus on a part which leads the crime investigation scene people to be like, oh, here, okay, I'll take that into consideration. Like, it looked like he was actually leading them to where they needed to go, which I thought was really cool. But then once you start getting into and again, I don't think the riddles need to be these amazing things that no one could ever figure out, but it's kind of just was like, because the riddles weren't ever really the deal. Like, it was the cipher, it was all that stuff. So, but yeah, if he's just solving these riddles, I'm like, it seems like he just knows these riddles. I don't think like he's reasoning through any of them. Like, the way he's responding, it's kind of just like, oh, I know that one, it's this. Like, it always felt like that. So I wasn't like, it's not like he's deducing anything. And then to get back to Falcone, like, which they say Falcone in this, I prefer Falcone, but I will say Falcone because
I like Falcone.
But in this movie they say Falcone, so I will keep saying it. The way he was like, yeah, it seems like Maroni killed your parents, and I'm like, he's just gonna go on that. Like, and I understand that you bring his parents into it, he feels, but the movie is so pushing for, it's what I said, like, at odds, right? Like, it's pushing you to be like, what a great detective, like, he's gonna do detective stuff. I'm like, do I want to watch him do something mid-level?
I don't want to watch him.
I don't want to watch him be mid-level detective.
He's not good at it, though. He's not good at it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he's not good. He's not specifically good at it. He's saying a lot of things. He's making a lot of assumptions, and then we realize that maybe he shouldn't have made that assumption. And he's like, yeah, like, Maroni killed my parent, and then he's like, Alfred like gets out of his coma. I don't even know what. I guess he was sleeping.
Concussed. Extreme concussion. Let's say. I don't know. Whatever.
Wakes up to Bruce being like, "You lied to me." I'm like, "Are you not gonna just be like, are you okay?" Especially where the scene ends. It's weird to just start with
It starts off so
starts
like,
with him
oh,
being like
you
a
had an
little shit.
attack. You
You're a
had an
little shit.
attack
And
ready
he's
for a guy in a
and he's like,
hospital bed.
and to have
That's
Alfred be
brutal.
like, for Alfred to be like, I mean, if you think about it, it's clearly Falcone did that. Like,
Yeah.
clearly, you're like, man, like this guy that just got blown up in the face, which again, I'm not even going to touch that both of them survived being blown up in the face. Like that.
And they made a point to say C4. Like, come on,
again,
man.
like the movie's at odds because it's trying to be like, we're based in reality, but people get blown up in the face.
Thank you.
But like, again, if this was a movie if this was a movie where he made his car look like a Batmobile, I wouldn't mind getting blown up in the face and surviving with
I agree.
a couple of scratches on your face or nothing.
Or if Selena had like more than just a toque and it was like, oh, it's actually cat ears as opposed to like, you know, like if you actually leaned into that kind of
if it
kind of
leaned into that,
eccentricities,
I would be fine with
the
stuff
bomb
like
thing
that.
would be fine.
But
I agree.
But whatever. So that guy that just, as you said, is heavily concussed, is able to reason through. And I know that he sat with it a long time, but like that certainly clicked him right into gear to be like, no, actually, you should probably think about it this way. I'm like, yeah, this guy's not like good at this. I'm not saying I think Batman should just be an idiot who punches people. What I'm saying is the way I like to see him be smart is being able to point out people's weaknesses and have these contingency plans and like actually assess the situation and break it down. Like watching him be a detective against someone who clearly has outsmarted, as you said, the bombs go off, which I would expect. It would be a weird movie if you didn't have a moment like that of like all hope is lost.
Which I agree, but at the end of the day, I'm like, well,
we'll get to it, but what I'm saying is the Riddler outsmarted him, and that's the function of the Riddler. But like, it's the first movie, so we haven't had time for me to be like, but he's smarter than everyone else. I just think he's not that, like, I don't think he's that good at being a detective.
Yeah.
And then you put him up against like the best mind first, which again is the problem I have with Batman versus Superman, which is that's the ceiling. Like, you really want to test the skills, you put him up against Riddler. No one else is going to be Riddler after this.
Yeah.
Like, no one else is known for that. You can bring Riddler back, but then again, then we just base it on, well, I know your old tricks. It's not him like applying. Like, I mean, it is him applying, but it's kind of just like, I don't know. He's not that good of a detective, so I wasn't really, didn't really move the needle for me. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's at odds because I found like in order to be a good detective, you have to essentially care. This Batman, in its like action scenes and all that kind of stuff, there's some things like getting blown up in the face that are, or like, I'm just gonna walk point blank into this close range automatic fire and the shotgun blast, and my armor's gonna like. There's some things that are egregiously dumb that I'm like, really, like, that is really what's happening right now. We're just walking directly into fire. Okay, I'll sure, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he sets up, I don't care if I die, but it's kind of like, well.
But then you care about solving the crime then, because my thing is,
I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying, like, it's a movie that's at odds with itself.
It's so dumb to me because I don't care if I die, but I'm like, well, then why would you even try to solve the crime? Why wouldn't you just go out every single night, beat people up senselessly until you do die?
He means like, if I die trying to do what I believe in, which that part I get. It's just, as you said, you can't just be, you have to have some sense of self-preservation to get the job done.
Exactly.
But so I guess we can get to the Riddler. I'll start with what I liked. It seemed like they were playing him more like Hush, the Thomas Elliot character, especially when they bring in the whole the journalist with the last name Elliot,
Edward Elliot, right?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that's his dad. Sorry, in the comics, that is Thomas Elliot's dad. And the way Riddler really high underlines, I'm so pissed that people cared about Bruce Wayne. Again, that's a Hush. That is Hush's motivation of why the fuck would anyone care about Bruce Wayne losing his parents? I lost my parents. Everyone loses their parents. Well, I mean, he tries to kill his parents, I should say. But like that envy he has of the way people tried to like rally around Bruce Wayne after his parents died. That is a Hush um motivation, and the way he wrapped up his face is kind of like what you would think. I guess he didn't wrap up his face, he's wearing a mask. It looks somewhat wrapped up like Hush. So I was like, wait,
Yeah.
are they pulling the rug from out from under us and being like, no, this is actually Thomas Elliot, not Edward Nashton? And then the movie kind of just lets it drop. But like the movie also at one point has a big screen that says Hush Money, and then Hush
Yes.
is written out. So it's like, I like this element. If this is if this is where they're going, because that is kind of how the comic works as well, is that you think Hush is someone and then it pulls the rug out from under you, and it's like, actually this was happening the whole time. And so I was like, wow, I'm excited now. Like, okay, we're doing Hush. But what I say all that to say, sure, he's Edward Nashton, the Riddler.
Yeah.
But his thing was, I want to help Batman kill all these idiots, and then the best part will be when he kills Bruce, or when we kill Bruce Wayne, because he keeps going, well, that's the one we missed Bruce Wayne. And I'm like, so he does see it as a loss, because his whole thing was Bruce Wayne is emblematic of what's wrong here. And I missed him, I didn't get him. So that's the problem I have with, he should see this as a win. He doesn't see it as a win because he missed his target. All of it is a microcosm of what he was doing throughout the whole movie. Is like, we're focused on these details of like, this mayor did this DA did this. He only ever really cared about killing off Bruce Wayne. But just like Batman, the audience is like focusing on all these stuff and then missing, like, he's about to blow up the seawall. Like he's this is really what he was after, which is that seawall brings everyone together and he can pick off Bruce Wayne in that moment. So, which he didn't get to do.
Okay, that's fair. My biggest thing was, I asked myself, what was the goal of the Joker? What was the goal of Batman throughout this whole movie, right? Because I'm
Riddler,
like, okay,
you mean,
right? What's that?
You mean Riddler, right?
Yeah. Sorry, Riddler. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to make sure, because Joker is in the movie. I just wanted to make sure.
I misspoke, because I'm like, oh, usually there's a Batman movie, there's usually Joker in a more prominent role. But anyways, Riddler. What are their goals? To me, Riddler's goal is to expose the truth and destabilize Gotham and all that.
I don't think that is his goal.
Right? You don't think it? You think it's?
I think his goal is to kill. Yes, it's a revenge.
Layered together with
he wants
ruining
to
everyone's reputation.
He wants to kill Bruce Wayne, and he's using all the other stuff as subterfuge. Everyone's running around figuring out, oh, this is about me. Like, even at one point, Gordon is worried, like, what if he comes after me? Like, that's what he's doing. He's throwing everyone off with all that stuff. And that's the same thing as, you solve this riddle, but it doesn't really matter because there's this cipher, and you're trying to solve the cipher, but it doesn't really matter because there's this website. Like, I think that is what's well written about it, but I don't know about the execution. I think his goal isn't the destabilization. Just like the trucker convoy goal isn't to like get freedom for everybody. You can say a bunch of stuff that gets people on your side. You can say, hey, these politicians, they're really taking advantage of. That's how you get, like, I saw some people make fun of him, like, he only had 500 followers. I'm like, I mean, he had at least 20 people show up to do what he wanted to do. That's how you get people involved, is you talk about things that seem universal when really you've got a very personal and selfish reason to get all this done. And that was, I need to kill Bruce Wayne.
Right. Because I saw this two ways. I saw him legitimately believing his own delusion of being like, yeah, me and Batman are working together to cleanse Gotham of its crime. And this is how I perceive corruption and everything. And this is how, and so we're going to line up and all this kind of stuff. Like, I thought he genuinely believed in that. And his goal was just to expose everything. And then, like, oh yeah, I wanted to kill Bruce, but like
no,
that it didn't seem like that was primary goal to me.
His primary goal was to kill Bruce Wayne. That was the primary goal. That's why he's so upset at the end of the movie. You wouldn't be upset if he was like, oh, I just missed the one piece. Like, he cared about, that was the piece. Everything else was icing on the cake. And and not even icing on the cake. Everything else is what he did to create the destabilization, to create this scenario where he can kill Bruce Wayne.
Okay, well, fair enough. If that was his goal, then there's some things I would reconsider from my own stance for Riddler. But then for Batman's goal, I'm like, okay, is your goal to stop the Riddler or just to get better? I know that meta goal is to get better at
I don't
fighting
think
crime.
it's a meta goal. I think he wants to be better. Like that's the part you missed, is his frustration with how to be most effective. And the end of the movie is
So
him
that's
finding
the
out a
goal.
way to be effective. Yes.
That
So I think, yeah, again, it is a well-written movie. As I said, if you take it scene by scene, this is really well written. It's
getting
some
to
of the
scene to scene
sequencing,
is
some of it,
painful.
well, it's as a whole, right? Is it better than the sum of its parts? Maybe not. I
No.
think that, but there's a lot of good parts to it, and I think what doesn't work for me with the Riddler is that final confrontation that you're talking about, because
Yep.
it's a little too clever in terms of all the layers that he's put on it, and then metatextually all the layers that are written for him, right? But
Mhm.
for this movie to make sense, his goal was to kill Bruce Wayne. And the movie is very much in conversation with what we're talking about. People get called out for privilege. People get called out for like this is about how people, not about, I shouldn't say that. I use that just as a kind of like way to connect my thoughts. So I hope people don't get caught up on that. But this movie is dealing with how people pervert ideas to get what they want, right? So if you're talking about the renewal project, that gets perverted so all these different people can get the money they want. If you talk about Riddler, he's perverting the idea of exposing the truth and actually wanting accountability for things so that he can get done what he actually wants to get done, which is kill Bruce Wayne.
It's PR. It's how you PR your own shit to get what you want, but make it appeal to everyone else.
Yes.
It's gaslighting to society of like,
well, it's like populist politics, right? Like
True.
that is what's happening here, right? And I think that what doesn't work for me in terms of Riddler, one, just I like Paul Dano a lot. I think he's really good, but I always start to get a bit weirded out when it looks like, is this person like suffering something neurological, not just like emotional? Like some of the like, I'm like, I don't really, I'm glad they kept him out of a fight. And he even says like, that's not what I do. But I'm just like, I don't know, like that we should be playing with that too much anymore in these movies. Like, you've got something wrong with your wiring, so you're gonna be a bad guy. I feel like we should stay away from that. And just some of the ways he played certain line readings, and just I was just like, I don't know, man. Like that's a bit too dangerous to like
the
to play with. Especially because they're not going to lean into it and unpack it more than they have to, right? So because I think that doesn't work for me already. It kind of puts me at a distance. And then what you were getting at, which is the delusion he has about working with Batman. I have to read it as he genuinely thought. I don't think he thinks Batman was willingly working with him. I don't think that, but I think he thinks like, see, I got you to work with me. And I'm like, but he didn't. I think he wasn't working with you. Like, it's weird that you think that you accomplished that. Like, it would only work if he was taunting him with that, which it didn't feel like he was taunting him.
Right. So
the way he was delivering the lines didn't feel like he was taunt, because that is the perfect time to taunt Batman and be like, look what I got you to do. Like, I told you to bring him out into the light. You brought him into the light, took him out. Now we need to now we just need the Bruce Wayne part of it. Like this is here we go. But like, I feel like that, again, not here to rewrite it. It didn't work for me because I didn't get the sense that he was taunting Batman and was like, look, I turned you into the bad guy. Like you're doing everything I want you to. It really felt like in some way he was kind of thinking like, I got him to work with me. Like I convinced him that this is the right way to go.
I feel like in that scene, he was more or less hoping, and this is where the Riddler's plan falls apart for me. Like, he was delusional in thinking that he was working together with Batman for sure. But of course, that scene to me works better if it's just like, hey, I'm revealing all these truths to you now. now you're on my side. Kind of like how in Peacemaker, the butterflies were like, now, like, once I tell you what we know, you're going to want to
Yeah.
work with us,
I
kind of
think the
deal.
idea
So
that
I thought,
he already thought that they were on the same side is weird.
yeah, exactly. Because I'm just like, that seems very delusional for someone that's very put together in regards to creating a plan, carrying it through, and all this kind of stuff. And then if we have that, so I'm like, oh, okay, so all we're doing is incel energy, which is hard incel energy from this Riddler and all this kind of stuff, right? So to the point where he's like freaking out, I'm like, okay, this makes sense to me, because he's like Batman, he already learned that he needs to connect with other people to be successful at what he's doing.
Mhm.
But he learned that earlier on in the movie versus Batman's taking the whole movie to learn that, right?
Yeah, I
So they're
guess
on
he
very
knew it
parallel
before the
paths.
movie. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He
they're
knew it
on
before the
very
movie started.
parallel paths throughout the
Mhm.
entire movie. The idea of like, because I heard that that's the opening scene, is you see things through Paul Dano's eyes, and you're
Mhm.
like, oh, okay, is this more of a movie where we're building up the rogues and then very slowly building up Batman? Because to me, I'm like, this is a better origin story for the Riddler and the Penguin and Catwoman
I would
than it
disagree
is
with that.
for Batman.
I would
I feel.
disagree with that. I think we've already talked through how it's clearly like this. Okay, he got the 2 years of being rusty out of the way. This is how he knows how to move forward now. He's
Yeah.
gonna work about it. Riddler is done. Like, I mean, I'm assuming they will bring him back,
Yep.
but he's already hit his ceiling, as I said. Like, he's not gonna come up with a plan that you feel like is better than what he just did. There's nothing else he can learn from this situation other than just be another pain in the ass next time you see him.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't really feel like an origin for him. And we don't learn anything new about the Penguin for me to feel like this is an origin story. It
That's
is
fair.
introducing a character that we will learn more about in his TV
Mhm.
show, but you don't know anything about him for sure. You know, he worked with Carmine Falcone, and
Mhm.
he could fill that vacuum,
Mhm.
but we don't know anything. So it doesn't really feel like an origin for him. And Catwoman feels like a strong supporting character in a movie that's
Yeah.
more about Batman realizing how to move forward, because Catwoman seems like she knows what she's doing already. It
Yeah.
feels like you're catching her on the tail end of things. Like she
Nice
already
pun.
knows. Yeah. Sorry. But like she already knows. Like at no, like other than when she's facing her father and he looks like he might choke her out.
Yeah. She's sure
There's
of
no
who she
point where you're
is.
like, man,
Yeah.
like she really needs to, like, as I said, she gets the Batman scenes that you normally
Mhm.
would see. So
Mhm.
she is competent enough to go into the room and improvise conversations with people she doesn't really want to talk to. She
Mhm.
knows how to go in and take out people one by one to get what she needs to get. So I don't, again, it didn't really feel like an origin for her. It just felt like
Yeah, she was a
she's
wrapped up
in there
bow
and she
already,
actually
for
knows
sure.
what she's doing.
Yeah, she's a
It's
complete character.
the
So
only
yeah,
person
true.
that feels like they're learning something is Batman.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's just, you're right. I mean, the writing itself, because I can appreciate it while unpacking it, but to me, I'm like, but the execution of it is where it
Yeah.
really falls apart for me.
Yes, I mean, I keep just thinking like I will rewatch it at some point. I will sit with it more, but it I can respect how well written scene by scene it is. I can
Mhm.
respect the performances. It just didn't come together as like this undeniable thing that I
Mhm.
thought was great, like when I saw The Dark Knight.
So
And that's not to compare the two. It's just
Mhm.
like I used a Batman movie, but what I'm saying is sometimes I just watch a movie and I'm like, yeah, this was great. And
Mhm.
this one is more like, let me think about this more.
yeah, this to me was immediately like, I know exactly how I feel about this, and it's just, it wasn't it. It felt like someone took Seven and God, what was the other movie? Blade Runner, and
Because of
the
all the
Nolan,
rain.
yeah, and the Nolan movies, and put it in a blender and gave us this.
Maybe. I thought the movie did a good job of not being any like it's a Batman movie. So yeah, you're going to have to compare it to certain things that happen in other Batman movies. But I felt like it did a good and yes, it is a thriller that has a serial killer in it, so it's gonna feel similar to something like Seven, but I felt
Mm.
like it did a good job of just being its own thing. I wasn't sitting there like worried about like, wow, this feels too much like this, or this feels like that. It just felt like, oh, this is the world that we're in. And I thought while I was watching the movie, it engaged me enough that I wasn't consciously thinking about how it's
Right.
like these other things.
So that was the funny thing to me, is like every time I saw certain things, I'm like, oh, this is like this, this is like this is like this is like, and I'm like, that didn't work well for me, because I'm like, it didn't turn it enough into its own thing, right? Like there's certain things where the the God, the nightclub stuff was very Nolan-esque to me, but I'm like, sure, but it's when we establish the Penguin, you have to have a nightclub. So it, whatever, I can give way to that. The hostage video was kind of like, what the hell? Like, are we doing this really? The there was like the dying officials montage. Like, there's a lot of stuff here that I'm like, I've seen this before in specifically Batman films and then in other crime films too. But I'm like, it doesn't really work that well for me because there's too
That's
many
fair.
things going on at once.
I don't feel that way, but that's
Mm.
fair. I thought that it did a good job of in the moment making me feel like it was just its own thing, because I wouldn't disagree with anything you said in terms
Mhm.
of how they line up with other movies, but in the moment I didn't feel that way.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
fair.
thought that it did a good job of standing on its own,
Mhm.
even though it's very like when you talk about like it's the same thing that happened with Nolan's movies. He's borrowing a lot from
Yes.
the Burton movies, uh but it doesn't feel like it in if you're actually engaged in the movie and watching, like you can obviously then go through it with a bit more of an academic approach and be like, well, this is clearly a riff on this is clearly a riff on that. So that's why I said like most Batman movies you're going to find things that are like, well, that's like that, that's like that.
Mhm.
Unavoidable, but it's so then it does become more about how do I feel in the moment while I'm watching it.
Yep. And it made me feel like, oh,
Mhm.
this is like the Alibaba version of Batman movies.
Right, well, yeah, because I feel like at the beginning you were agreeing with me that it felt different enough, but I guess you're saying no.
Well, in it did tonally, it like everything felt different enough, but there's so many things that were just like, this is so similar to this that I couldn't ignore it, and just pulls me out of it, right? It
Yeah,
did
that's fair.
establish it established a good beginning where it was like, yeah, we're doing this, we're doing this. I'm like, okay, this is different, this is cool, this is cool. But I'm like, wait, that shot's this, that shot's this, that shot's that. I'm like, damn it, this is just making me feel like this is a rehash of a lot of different things, right? But you're right in the sense where, especially because if you're trying to get comic accurate shots or like scenes and everything like that, you would have seen some version of it in the past,
Mhm.
either animated or through
Yeah.
comics or whatever. But it's just like it does. I don't know. It to me, it's the uncomfortableness and the lingering time that you're spending with this movie that really makes it a harder pill for me to swallow.
I like that they give you time with stuff because it highlights the two things that really were for me in terms of actually giving you story and
Mhm.
character exposition without talking.
Mhm.
um but I think that like I had a friend, not had, I have a friend that was hoping to take his kids to this, and I was like, I mean, they say fuck in it, they say shit almost every line, but
Mhm.
like I was kind of like, I don't think that would stick with kids realistically, like the kids the that are this age. I don't think
Mhm.
that would stick with them. It's bloodless, and I don't say that as a knock, but like
Mhm.
because they talk about blood, but you don't really see blood.
Mhm.
People get blown up and don't really have any mangled faces, so that's fine as well. So it's not about like would they be traumatized by it or scared by it. I think they'd mostly be bored.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not saying it's a boring movie. I'm saying this feels like the most adult geared Batman, and not in the like, ooh, they're sexy and they swear. It's more just like you actually have to think about it. It's more cerebral than other Batmans. And I'm not saying other Batmans are stupid. I'm
Right.
saying this movie really is about this web that got created based on the renewal plan.
Mhm.
And even as we just talked through it, you might miss what Riddler's actual point was
Mhm.
because he's doing this whole web thing. And I don't know that kids, I don't really want to give their ages or whatever, but like these younger kids, I don't know that they would be like, well, this was fun. I think they'd be like, a lot of what? Like, what did he say? What does that
Yeah.
mean? What's going on? Because I found it hard to kind of keep up sometimes as they kept unraveling things. So you have to be mentally engaged. It's, as much as there's visual storytelling going on, which is great, it is what you're talking about, is where it's like, no, this is happening quietly. This
Mhm.
is like, you need to unpack what's happening here visually, in addition to like a lot of dialogue that's going to come at you. So I don't really feel like this one had kids in mind, and that's not a knock or a
No.
positive. It's just, if people were thinking about that, I yeah, like other than when he's like happy fucking Halloween or something like that, like
Yeah.
it doesn't really feel like
There's no
it would
element
upset
for a
kids.
kid.
I
Yeah.
don't think it would upset kids, but I don't, unless your kid is like, I really care about like the writing in Batman, I don't know that it would go over well with them. It
I
feels
would
like-
agree with that. I think the
This
moment
feels-
you give us the Batmobile the way it is, where it's not over the top animated eccentric like a bat, where I'm like, well, you don't have toy sales now.
Oh, you could sell that as a toy for
you
sure.
can still sell it as a
can
toy.
sell that.
Don't get me
But
wrong.
I know,
but I mean,
know
like,
what you're saying.
yeah, like, oh, it's not a Happy Meal tie together gimmick, right? Because it's way too dark for a Happy Meal kind of crowd. Like, this is a movie that's purely interested in the adult audience base.
Yes.
That's there's no aspect of this that has anyone under the age of, let's say, 14, 13 in mind.
Yes.
I would say.
I would say that. I would say that this is not it's, well, I mean, maybe people would find the Riddler's mannerisms and voice scary at times, but I
Mhm.
think you'd get over it as a kid. I don't know.
Yeah, you'd get over
I
that
just
real
feel
quick.
like I don't mean this as it's not for kids in the sense that you're gonna have to like have some hard conversations after about what's, it's just gonna be like, it's
Well, you
not for
might.
kids. It just really does not care about kids.
Yeah. It's and I mean, that's fine. It's
Yes,
just like,
yeah.
would you bring it's the same as saying, like, is Blade Runner really for kids? Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
kids can like Blade Runner,
Mhm.
but is it for kids?
Well, yeah,
No.
I mean, I think people just I've seen it. A fellow That Shelf podcaster Jeremy Lalone has said this about his son. Was like, worst case scenario, he'll just be bored. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's fine. He'll have a like theater experience, and he was bored. That's perfectly fine. But I
guess what you're trying to say is, if you're excited about bringing the family back to the theaters, this
Yeah.
is not the movie to do
maybe
it
go
for.
see Uncharted, which I haven't seen, but maybe go see that. Or maybe that's
Right.
family friendly.
Right. Or
But
wait
yeah.
a few more weeks for the next Marvel movie.
Yeah. But yeah, let's rate this.
Mhm.
I guess I could go first.
I would
I
love for you to go
vamp
first,
for
because
time.
I feel like this is not good from my end.
All right, let's rate this. I'm going to rate this an 8.
Oh wow, this is a duty 5 for me.
Interesting. All right.
I really did not like this, but I mean, like, detective noir films just generally do not like.
Yeah, you don't like those.
Yeah. And this was like, it didn't work for me. It just didn't work. I appreciate what they try to do. The world building is amazing. I feel like the stuff they did with the cipher and all that kind of stuff, it is very, very impressive. But then, especially when you start watching like other content creators break down the cipher and like do all that kind of stuff and talk about that, I'm like, it seems like the brilliance of the movie, like, was the brilliance of the movie trying to get us, the audience, to decipher and fix and like feel like we're a part of solving this crime? Like, is that what this is? Because that would be kind of cool.
That's usually how
Yeah.
thrillers work. But
yes, but I mean, like, this on a bigger, more meta level, where it's like, oh, the people that really care and did the homework beforehand would have noticed something in the movie. I just didn't get, like, oh, there wasn't that
don't think
connection
that's the
to it
case.
either. But that's what I'm saying. There's no reward, there's no payoff for that side of it, and then it's just
Speaking
like,
of
oh,
no payoff. Speaking of no payoff, don't sit for the post credit scene. The post credit scene is already in the movie, which is the Joker talking to Riddler from behind the door. That's what should have been the post credit scene.
Yes.
Not, hey,
not
go to
this
my website.
nonsense. The El Ratada
Yeah.
goodbye
You-
thing.
As Ben said, you can
Screw
go
that.
to that site, you can answer some riddles. You're just gonna the big payoff is watching the campaign video for Thomas Wayne. That's
Boo. Annoyance, that's all.
Barry Keoghan from Eternals and Killing of a Sacred Deer is Joker.
Yeah.
Great. I hope they show his face in a movie. And yeah, that's it. I think that's I just wanted to end on that. Barry Keoghan.
Oh yeah.
is
And
Joker.
they're friends. Riddler and Joker are friends.
I mean, are they?
I mean,
he
it-
cheered
to the degree
he cheered
where-
Riddler up, but I think this movie showed that people will leverage your suffering to get one up on you. So
Yep.
I think
100%.
that's what's happening there. But yes. Anyway, thatshelf.com. That's a place that you can find us and other podcasts like Bad Game Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels. You can read Victor Stiff's review of this very movie, The Batman, on that shelf. You can watch Jason Gorber's video review of The Batman on that shelf. And you can find the podcast I just named and our podcast. If you'd like to hear older podcasts, please go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter is @tdfspoiled. So please hit us up there. We'd love to hear what you thought of the movie. And we are on, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, a whole bunch of places. So please head there, rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, and you know what to do if you don't find us where you get podcasts. Let us know about this new fangled podcast place that we don't know about already, and we'll fix it.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Ben, take us out with a great voice from the movie.
Cheers.
Excellent.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.